Imagine that you are a non-believer. You don't go to church, you don't say your daily prayers, you don't believe in the posthumous life of the soul. What will happen to you if it turns out that this life does exist? Will you go to that place that believers call hell? Now imagine that you are a believer who goes to church and prays every day. Does this mean that such a person will go to heaven after death? You will be surprised to know that there are answers to all these questions, which are confirmed by research. And these answers often don't match what we've been taught, says University of California professor Stafford Betty, who studies life after death. Having analyzed messages from different personalities from the afterlife, Stafford Betty found that most of these messages describe a very different picture of life after death than what we know from earthly religions. According to the professor, these messages indicate that our ideas about heaven and hell are too simplistic and sometimes mislead people. Stafford Betty notes that in all major earthly religions there are descriptions of a heavenly judgment. Every soul must face it after the end of earthly life. What do the departed say about it? Will the soul be able to escape punishment for bad deeds, and will those souls who have done nothing wrong be rewarded? Stafford Betty answers all these questions with messages from departed souls. For example, after his death on the Titanic, publicist William Stead left a message for the living that in the afterlife, the soul passes judgment on itself. Reviewing the annals of its earthly deeds, it feels remorse or happiness depending on what it has done. William Stead reports, "The whole point of the heavenly judgment is to enable the soul to see the real self. It is a judgment administered by God, but through our higher self. No one in the face of truth will be as harsh a judge as man is to himself. For many this judgment becomes a severe trial." And here is what the spirit of John Edmondson, who in his earthly life was a judge in New York City, said about the heavenly court. Edmondson said that he was shown all the deeds of his life after death. First he saw those pictures in which he had wrongly judged other people, spoken harshly, or thought badly of someone. When I saw all my mistakes, it seemed to me that my whole life consisted only of them. I was visited by despair because I thought that after that I would be severely punished. But then I saw those situations in my life when I showed mercy to someone, helped in a difficult moment, gave alms. I saw those people whom I had pardoned on earth, following my inner laws of justice. It seemed that it was these deeds more than other good deeds that lit my path, John Edmondson reported. After his death, Canadian professor Arthur Matheson reported that all our deeds in the netherworld will have consequences. The punishment of the soul occurs according to the law of correspondence, and there can be no mistakes. According to Arthur Matheson, the departed will have to look back on his earthly life. He will have to find out what other people thought about his actions. Often these revelations bring the soul to a difficult experience. Still, however, the messages given contain few specifics. Stafford Betty also gives descriptions of how the law of retribution for earthly deeds affects the soul in this or that case. One of them will be discussed below. From a Discovering Life Beyond the Line, What the Gone Say About Their World, there are conclusions to be drawn from the above accounts. Firstly, in the netherworld we are our own judges. Second, although the world's major religions are right that judgment awaits us, they are wrong about the details. None of the spirits mention God sitting on a throne with a scepter in his hand. But even if God does judge us, it is through our higher self. Third, judgment serves one single purpose, the change of the soul. It is a painful process, but its purpose is not punishment but change. Based on messages from the afterlife, the posthumous fate of the soul is determined by our actions, especially those that become our habit. This is what determines where the soul goes when it leaves the body. According to researcher Stafford Betty, the most detailed story of how the law of retribution works in the other world is the story of an American woman, Mary Norton, who died in the late 19th century. This story was passed down through Robert Lease. In her earthly life, Mary was the only child in her family. Being wealthy, her father fulfilled all of Mary's wishes. Therefore, the girl grew up with the idea that everything she wished for must be fulfilled. Mary's desires often became the cause of suffering of others. At the same time, her parents and herself considered themselves religious people. The head of the family never spared money for the church and tried to attend services. Mary had hardly any friends. Her father had taught her to be friends only with those of equal social status. And there were only a few. Mary chose her peer Sadie as her friend. The girls' fathers were rivals, but that didn't stop their friendship. When Sadie and Mary turned 18, they became enviable brides. They were courted by all the decent boys in the neighborhood. Sadie and Mary were spoilt for attention and never looked at anyone seriously. The friends came up with an idea for fun. Sadie and Mary competed to break up as many couples in love as possible. When a young man fell in love with Mary or Sadie, the girls lost interest in him. One day, a new young man appeared in their midst. His name was Charlie. Many girls liked him. Sadie and Mary felt it was their duty to draw this young man's attention to themselves. Soon Charlie fell in love with Mary. He proposed to her. But Mary only laughed at him. The girl thought that after that the unhappy Charlie would haunt her. However, the days passed, but the young man did not appear. Mary soon learnt that Charlie had proposed to her friend Sadie, and she had agreed. When I heard about it, my mind went blank. I was so furious I was shaking. Then everything went black in my eyes, and I lost my senses, Mary reported. When Mary regained consciousness, she decided to take revenge on her friend or die. Sadie and Charlie soon left town. Mary was able to find out where the newlyweds had gone. Mary's only concern now was how to arrange for her to meet Charlie. Their meeting took place 5 years after the incident. During a chance meeting with Mary, Charlie was the first to speak. He said he had made a mistake in marrying Sadie. It didn't take much trouble for Mary to get Charlie away from the family. Less than a month after meeting Mary, he left his wife and children. However, their joy was short-lived. Mary felt a decline in strength. Soon she died of inflammation of the brain. Leaving her body, Mary found herself in total darkness. Her whole body was ice cold. She could not move or speak. Mary felt as if she had been in this state for a century. Finally, she saw a light. Mary was irresistibly drawn towards it. At the end of the path, she saw Charlie. During this meeting, Charlie looked a little older. He was talking to some stranger. Watching them, Mary soon realized that Charlie was in love with this woman. When Mary learned this, she was so furious that she wanted to lash out at her rival, but she could do nothing. Her anger and jealousy caused her indescribable pain. The suffering was such that, according to Mary, she would rather stay in that chilling void than see Charlie happy. This case clearly shows us that it is not God or the devil who causes suffering to a person after death. This means that there is no terrible judgment that we are told about. Post-mortem suffering flows naturally from the character of the soul. Many souls do not repent for their sins at all, but wander in the dark zone that is near the earth's surface. These souls experience the same feelings as they did in earthly life. They suffer until they embark on the path of their reformation, explained Stafford Betty. To summarize, the professor observes that whatever position we occupy in earthly life will not matter after our death. In the netherworld, only our spiritual worth matters. Only our deeds speak for us or against us there. And we get only what we deserve.